this will be the agenda today, and I'll check back when it's over. So no more chit chat, over to me. How much stereo tube you need is highly personal. In my case, I like to have a bit of adjustability. For example, if I go bikepacking, I might want to raise the stem a bit to have more space for a handlebar bag and stuff like that. Here I just took the top spacer you can see here and used the spacer half that height to use as a guide to make the cut mark. After the cut mark, I'll just put some masking tape over the cutting area and then mark on the tape directly where the cut should be. This is just to keep the carbon from fraying a bit. I actually don't know if it even makes a difference, but better be safe than sorry. Since we don't have anything connected to the fork at this point, we could just use the saw guide and strap it into a vise and cut it. I don't actually have the cutting on video, but I've done a video on cutting stereo tube before, so hopefully the YouTube card should be visible in the corner of this video. So once the stereo tube is cut, I like to set up the fork and the handlebars as they should be in the frame, because it will be a bit easier to work with. I like to go way overboard with the grease, greasing both the bearing seat in the head tube as well as the bearing. Yeah, once I get everything in place, I just wipe off the excess grease. The bottom bearing is in. I will also prep the bearing seat on the fork crown. Love that grease. Grease is my friend. The top bearing seat as well. Get the grease in there. We love grease. Thread the fork in, on with the top bearing, and why not put some grease on the wedge as well. Let's try to wipe off any grease you get on the steerer, because you don't want to have normal grease between the steerer and the stem. Top bearing cover on, and on with the stem and handlebars. And if we cut this correctly now, we should have enough space between the top cap and the stereo tube to tighten it down and remove any play in the headset. So once the fork is in, this is the time I would actually root the front brake. I had already covered this in episode 2 though, which focused on everything routing related. So check that video for more in-depth instructions. Before we start bleeding, we just need to attach the calipers. If you're interested in both lengths, check the descriptions and I will link the correct lengths for both the fork and the chainstays. We also need to connect the hoses to the brake levers. I have a more in-depth video on the Dura-Ace disc brake installation. Hopefully you will see that card linked up in the corner of this video. But a brief recap. You need to put the insert in the end of the hose. Thread the bolt on first, then the olive, and then attach it to the brake lever with I think it's 8 Newton meters, and then repeat on the other brake as well. And remember, this is the last chance to actually check that you have the correct length. You can always cut them shorter, but you can't make them longer, so just make sure you're happy with the length. So this bleeding part won't go crazy in depth on everything. If you want more detailed instructions, please check my other video on the Dura-Ace disc brake installation. So to start with, we'll remove the bleed screw in the brake lever, attach the funnel adapter that comes with the brake levers, at least if you buy them in a set. I think you can buy it separately as well. If I find it, I will put the link in the description. Attach the bleed funnel to the funnel adapter. And in this case, as we have a totally dry system, we will use a syringe to push the fluid from the caliper up to the bleed funnel basically. And we'll just keep pushing until we have about half the funnel full of brake fluid. Once that is done, you can remove the syringe. Leave the rubber hose and put just a plastic bag around it or something just to collect any excess brake fluid. As we want to get all the air out of the system, we're just going to squeeze the lever a couple of times. you'll probably see some bubbles coming up. And that will do this technique while at the same time as you squeeze the lever, you quickly open and close the bleed nut on the caliper. And then give it another couple of squeezes, and once you do this a couple of times, you will feel the level firm up more and more. And yeah, just tip the frame in different angles, tap the hoses, and just keep doing this until air bubbles stop coming up in the funnel. Again, check my other video on the Dura-Ace disc brake installations for more in-depth instructions. Then we just need to do the same thing for the rear brake. Obviously the hose is a bit longer, so you might have to push a bit more fluid into the system. I would also recommend that you have quite a bit of a reach. A set of nice long arms would help you reach the brake lever at the same time you open and close the bleed nut on the caliper. So yeah, sort the long arms or get a friend to help you. Little word of warning here is when you're done and you're reattaching the bleed screw in the lever, since it's a small 2mm Allen key, be very careful not to over tighten it, because that screw is so easy to strip. I stripped one, I still managed to get it out, but I had to find a new screw, so be careful. And once you're done with the bleeding, make sure you give it a wipe off with either alcohol or degreaser, both on the calipers and around the brake levers. Then I'm gonna prep the rear wheel as well. Put some grease on the interface between the rotor and the hub. Then you just need to tighten down the rotor lock nut. If you have a torque wrench, it's 40 Newton meters. Then for the cassette, it's basically the same thing. I always prep the free hub with some grease before I put the cassette on. Here I use a spacer as I'm using a mountain bike cassette. You only need to use this spacer if you're using a mountain bike cassette on a road free hub. Same as the rotor, tighten it down to 40 Newton meters. Assuming we have removed the yellow bleed blocks, we're gonna install the brake pads. And remember that little safety clip on the inside. Then we can install the rear wheel and adjust the caliper so we won't have any brake rub. Basically, squeeze the brake lever and tighten the caliper bolts, and you should be brake rub free. I've done a video of this as well. If you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description. So the last part of this video will be indexing our gears. But first we need to attach the chain. I won't go too in depth there, but if you want to see more about the chain install, check my 1x conversion video. So indexing gears is one reason why I really love Di2. It's really simple actually, and you can actually do it out on the road while riding, which is the best part. I like to be in the ballpark though before I start my first ride. So I will set the high, is it high or low? The limit screw on the big cog first. Once the upper limit screw is set, I will shift down to the 5th cog. Put the system in adjustment mode by holding down the junction button for a few seconds. Then I will use the upshift button on the shift lever to adjust the rear mech until I can hear the chain touching the cog above. After that, I will just use the downshift button to click down about 5 to 6 clicks. That will get me into the ballpark 9 out of 10 times. So shift it down to the smallest cog, adjust the limit screw there as well, and the final adjustment will be made out on the road. So that's it for this episode. This build has taken a lot longer to edit than I expected, but I hope I will finish up this build in the next episode. So stay tuned, subscribe if you want to see the rest of the build. I will also do some kind of first impression or first ride kind of deal. So yeah, catch you in the next one.